So the range of module has been represented by 1, 1 is 1.25, 1.5, 2, 2.5. So this is the standard modules of gear which has been followed in our Indian country. Oh, okay, so that is what it was mentioned like a module. And what is meant by backlash? So generally backlash is nothing but it is the difference between tooth space and tooth thickness. Okay, so there are so many differences between the tooth face and the tooth thickness. Let us take one example. Here you just take this tooth and the second tooth. Let us assume it is the first tooth and let us assume it is the second tooth. Generally in between the tooth we having a space is what you call the tooth space, and the size of the teeth can be represented as it is the tooth size. Okay, if there is any differences you found, for example, let us assume the distance between the two teeth is around 20 mm and the size of the actual tooth it is around let us take it as it is 35 mm. Okay, so the size of the tooth is 35 mm wherever the size of the gap or the tooth space you just need to take it is 25 mm. So what happens if there is a meshing, if the value is very less when compared to the tooth size? Okay, what happens, the meshing will not be properly happened and there is a possibility of tooth damage. Okay, so that tooth damage, in order to avoid that, we should have a knowledge about the backlash. Okay, so backlash is a terminology which is used to determine the differences between the tooth space and the tooth thickness, which has been measured in from using the pitch circle diameter. And theoretically the backlash should be 0, because if the backlash is not equal to 0, if there is some backlash is more than 0, it means it totally the jamming of the gear will happen. It doesn't make any kind of motion and also it cannot transfer any kind of motion. So that is the meaning of backlash values. So for all your gear toothing meshing elements, the backlash should be equal to 0. It should not be more than 0. If it exists, definitely there will be no motion will takes place in between the gears due to this backlash. Okay, so this is what here clearly mentioned about that backlash. Okay, but in actual practice some backlash must be allowed to prevent jamming of the teeth due to tooth errors and thermal expansion. In some elements there is a possibility to be allowed the backlash in order to prevent the damaging of the gear tooth and in order to overcome the errors, and also because of the thermal or heat expansion. Okay, there is a heat expansion which takes place, hence it can make a crack in your tooth. Because of the heat, when there is a friction is there is huge amount of pressure and heat also developed. Because of that overheat, the tooth edges which may getting damaged. In order to avoid that, we may give more amount of backlash in your particular component designing, okay, or particular gear. Okay, so that is what you call that backlash of this Spur gear. Okay, and what are the formulas which has been used to determine the gear sizes and module and gear pitches? The range of formulas which has been used, the first one, if you're going to calculate the center distance, we need to know number of teeth on the pinion plus number of teeth on the gear. And parallelly, we need to know what are the circular pitches is there with respect to that 2 pi, which represents rotation of the one revolution. Okay, thank you.